Jojo here, and welcome back to my channel. So today I decided I'm going to do another writing video since I realized I haven't uploaded any new writing videos as of late. So this video is going to be dedicated solely to world building. Now, I've been doing these writing videos, for those of you who are new to watching this, I have been doing these writing videos to kind of share my writing process with you guys, what my experience has been, what has worked for me in my first ever experience of writing a novel. Now, just keep in mind your writing process will change over the course of your writing. Like if you're writing a novel, your writing process is never going to be the same thing every time, but this is the first one that I've done, and I have published before. I used to write for the student newspaper, so I will leave the link down below if you guys want to check out my published works. But I have not written anything really creatively and have had it published, so this is my very first time. So if you guys are currently writing your first novel, or are thinking about writing your own one, or dream about writing your own one, hopefully these videos will be helpful to you. Anyway, like I said, this video is going to be solely me talking about world building. Now, what I did in terms of world building, I noticed that it's very, very different for everybody depending on what your genre is. Because my piece is a historical fiction piece, the time period that it's just more about time period and embodying the realism of that time period when you're writing a piece. It's not necessarily about building an entire world. You're working with a world that already exists, if that makes any sense. So because my novel is set in the 1920s, I wasn't sure what year it was going to be, so I started really immersing myself into that world. I started listening to audio tapes, audio tapes, footage, old movies, because silent films were around at that time. They didn't really have soundies, I think, until the 30s. I really started immersing myself. I even started listening to music from the 20s to kind of really immerse myself into that time. I started watching films set in that time, even films that were made in that time, like I said, meaning silent films. And I started really picturing it in my head. Another thing that really helps is if you've been to that place before, if you've traveled to like, for instance, my piece is set in 1920s New York. So I've been to New York a couple of times already, so I kind of knew the places in my head. I was able to describe them from memory, as well as looking at pictures and movies and videos, and that really, and listening to music. So that really helped me get into the vibe of my piece and set the tone. Now, like for my piece, I also went to other things, like other places that I was able to incorporate in my piece as well. Every few years, my family and I go to Geneva because I have family that lives in Switzerland. So when we go there, we always take a trip to Yvois, which is this very small medieval city in the south of France. Gorgeous, super touristic, and that place I was able because I was there, I was able to really feel how shiny it was. It's a sailboat, small city, so everyone there pretty much owns a boat, so it is on the water. So I was able to, because of that place, I was able to write while I was, the last time I was in Switzerland, I was able to write in my book and embody that place really raw and straight to the paper. It's literally from my site to paper, and that helps so much when you're in that, when you're able to do that, and it makes that place, it makes your description of your setting literally jump off the page. So with that being said, I know, like, if you're writing a piece that's in another country, I'm not saying for you to make that trip or anything like that, but there's also things close to home places that you can find that can really help you embody the places on your paper. So for instance, I'm going to give you a scenario. Let's say that there's a part in your book where it's set in a park. You can go and find a park nearest to your house. You can go to that place, or a pub if it takes place in a bar, or if there's a scene that's in on the beach. Go to that place and really pay attention to the small details. use all your senses. What are you seeing? What do you feel? What can you touch? What can you taste? Can you taste the salty air? Can you see how the white the white foam from the water as the waves crash? Can you feel the grainy sand in between your toes and your fingers? I mean, those are details, literally, that really puts the reader into the setting of your world, and that helps so much. And so I recently advised someone this exercise of going to a place in terms of building characters. You could use this exercise to help with building characters as well. But I would say in basically the way I explained the exercise was, if you go to a place, like a place where you could people watch, and you just focus on one person, let's say a person that might entrance you or whatever, and you start describing that person. You start wondering, take into consideration what's the person wearing, what's their possible taste. Listen, if they start speaking, how do they sound? How do you feel about how they look? Do you find them attractive? Because maybe then you can sway the style of explaining this person on your page as someone that you want the reader to be attracted to as well. And so that exercise really works if you're trying to embody a character. Now, you can use the same exercise to basically build your setting. So, for instance, let's go to a park. So if you go to a park and you sit on a bench, explain the feel of the bench where you're sitting. What's the weather like? Is it very, very sunny? Is it rainy? Is it foggy? Explain what you're seeing. Do you see a lot of kids there? Do you see teenagers there? What are the teenagers doing? What are the trees? Are there a lot of trees? Are there hardly any trees? Is there a fountain? Like, really explain the place and explain the amount of details on everything that you see. Now, I'm not saying when you do this exercise and you write down all these details that you should just copy and paste and put it into your book or your scene or whatever. I'm not saying that. But if you're able to write it down on paper, when you go back to it later, you'll be able to take out and take in, oh, I really like how that sounds. I can put that in you could add that to your prose, and you can literally weed out what's important in terms of what you want your readers to digest and to really picture in their head. And that way, like, you can really, I think you can bring your reader into that world. Like I said, also, I will leave the questions down below because I don't remember all the questions of the exercise. So I'll write them down and leave in the description box below so you guys can try it at home. But I found it extremely helpful. I learned it in a creative writing class, and it's improved my writing so much. Another thing that I will say is, once let's say you finish a chapter, what I did is, usually writers say like to wait till the end before, and you've edited and you're ready for it to be seen before you look for a beta reader. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, a beta reader is someone that you basically ask them to read your work and they give you feedback, and it has to be constructive feedback so that you can continue with your editing your work. Now, when I finished writing my first chapter of the book, I turned to my sister and I asked my sister, I said, Isa, just listen and tell me what you think about this chapter. So I read her the chapter, and the chapter was basically just introductory of just setting up the place where my main character was. And that's really what and to kind of introduce other characters as well. So it was an introductory chapter, of course. And I read it to her, and she was able to say, I really like that detail. That sounded really good. And when I asked her at the end, when I finished reading the chapter to her, what does she think? And she's like, I feel like I was actually there. And so a lot of the advice that I gave you throughout this video really helped to kind of influence my prose in a way that it naturally was able to get my reader into the story. And she was explaining how it really hooked her. It really set up the story really well. And yeah, so hopefully that helped. I hope you guys find this video helpful. I know I was a little vague in some parts of this video, so if there's anything that needs to be clarifying, I will do it in a future video. I can do another world building video if you guys like this one. But yeah, so that's it, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.